He beat his pregnant wife, but he didn't know who her brothers were. She had worked double shifts day and night, pouring every ounce of strength into building his dream. She gave him her heart, her sacrifice, her trust, everything a woman could give. And now, she carried his child. But one drunken night, in a blind fit of jealousy, he raised a stick and struck the very woman who loved him most. A scream tore through the silent night. Not just a cry of pain, but the spark that would ignite a storm. 3 men, in 3 different cities, 3 powerful billionaire brothers, rose at once. And when they arrived, America would witness a family war, silent yet brutal, erupting into a storm of power, money, and revenge. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, if you've ever been betrayed until your heart shattered, stay with us until the very end. Because Sophia wasn't only fighting to protect her child, she was fighting to prove that truth and justice can never be defeated. Hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next dramatic part. That scream, it echoed down the quiet street, shattering the calm of a California night. Inside the small house, the truth of Sophia's nightmare unfolded. Ryan had come home, his breath thick with alcohol, his words poisoned by jealousy. He did not see his pregnant wife as the woman who had given him everything. He saw only lies, lies planted in his mind by another woman. "Whose child is it, Sophia?" His words cut the room in half. Sophia froze, her heart raced. "Ryan, it's yours. This is our baby." But he didn't hear her. He didn't want to. The poison of Vanessa's whispers had sunk too deep. Her lies crawled in his ears, telling him his wife had betrayed him, that the child she carried was not his. Ryan staggered closer, face twisted in rage. His hands shook, not from weakness but from anger too strong to contain. Sophia stepped back, her voice trembling. "Please, Ryan, you're wrong. This baby is ours." But his eyes saw only betrayal. The stick leaned against the wall, once used for fixing the fence. Tonight, it became a weapon. Ryan grabbed it with both hands, his knuckles pale, his breath heavy. He raised it high above his head, shadows stretching across the room. Sophia's heart thundered. She clutched her stomach, whispering desperately, "Please, don't. I'm carrying your child." But mercy had no place in his eyes. The stick came crashing down onto her shoulder. Pain exploded, hot and sharp. Her body buckled, but her arms wrapped tighter around her belly. She stumbled backward, tears streaming down her face, lips trembling with fear. "Stop, Ryan," she cried, her voice breaking. "Please, for the baby's sake." Another blow followed, heavier, crueler. The sound echoed off the walls, wood against flesh. Each strike tore at her body, but she shielded her unborn child with every breath she had left. Her knees gave way. She fell to the floor, arms still curved around her stomach, protecting the tiny life inside. The world blurred, colors twisting, edges fading. Through sobs, she whispered again, fragile but fierce, "Stay strong, little one. Stay with me." But the stick rose once more, and darkness closed in. The screams pierced the night. They tore through thin walls, broke through windows, reached the quiet street outside. Across the fence, a neighbor froze in place. At first, she thought it was an argument, but then came the sound of wood striking flesh. A thud, a cry, another thud. Too brutal to ignore. She rushed to her phone, fingers trembling as she dialed. 911, please, hurry. There's a woman being attacked next door. She's screaming. She sounds hurt, badly. Inside, Sophia's voice cracked with pleas. Her words tangled with sobs, begging Ryan to stop. But the noise did not stop. The neighbor pressed the phone harder to her ear, her own heart pounding. She could hear the violence, the cruelty, the shattering of trust. The dispatcher spoke firmly. "Officers are on their way. Stay calm." But calm was impossible. The neighbor peered through her window, hands shaking, eyes wide with horror. She saw the faint light flicker from Sophia's house. The shadow of Ryan loomed large, the stick raised again and again. She whispered to herself, voice breaking, "Please, let her survive. Please let someone save her." And with that call, a chain of events had begun, one that would destroy everything Ryan thought he controlled. Sophia's body could no longer hold. The pain was too sharp, the strikes too heavy. Her head spun as if the walls themselves were falling inward. She staggered once, twice, then dropped to the cold floor. Her breaths came shallow. Each inhale scraped like glass through her chest. Blood traced the corner of her lips, warm against her trembling skin. Her arms still wrapped tightly around her belly, instinct refusing to let go. Above her, Ryan's voice dripped with venom. You'll regret lying to me." The words echoed, hollow and cruel, as if the man she once loved no longer existed. Her vision blurred. The room dimmed. She clung to one thought, one fragile hope. She whispered to her child, her lips barely moving, her voice no louder than a breath, "Stay with me. Stay strong." Her tears fell onto the floor, mixing with the silence that followed. Then her body went limp, her eyes slipping shut. In the distance, sirens began to wail. Blue and red lights flickered faintly against the night sky. The neighbor's call had reached help, but for Sophia, the darkness had already come. The last sound she heard was her own heartbeat slowing, and then fading away. Morning came with the echo of hospital halls. Sophia's name was whispered not as a victim, but as a nurse everyone respected. She had always been the woman who stayed after her shift to hold the hand of a lonely patient. The one who worked through exhaustion, her smile never fading, even when her own body begged for rest. Her colleagues remembered her soft voice, her steady hands, the way her eyes carried kindness even in the hardest nights. Patients spoke of her as an angel in scrubs, someone who gave comfort when hope felt out of reach. Yet, behind that gentle image was a secret darkness. The bruises she covered beneath long sleeves, the tears she wiped away before walking into a patient's room, the mask she wore so no one would ever suspect. Her life at the hospital was light, filled with gratitude and admiration. Her life at home was shadows, silence, and fear. No one could imagine that the same woman who lifted spirits each day returned to a house where her own spirit was crushed. The contrast was sharp, and it told a story few ever saw. Before the bruises, before the silence, there was love. Sophia had met Ryan when he was a struggling mechanic with oil-stained hands and dreams too big for his small garage. She believed in him when no one else did. She believed so deeply that she worked double shifts at the hospital, pouring every extra dollar into his dream of owning an auto shop. She skipped vacations, wore the same shoes until they tore, came home late with aching feet and an empty stomach. Yet her heart was full because she thought love was sacrifice. She thought giving was what kept a marriage alive. For a while, Ryan was grateful. For a while, he held her close and called her his reason to keep fighting. But as the bills piled up and success never came, gratitude faded. In its place grew bitterness. Each paycheck she brought home reminded him of his own failures. Each hour she worked late felt, in his mind, like proof she valued others more than him. Her sacrifice, once a gift, became fuel for resentment, and that resentment would one day twist into betrayal. Into that resentment walked Vanessa Lopez. She was everything Sophia was not, at least in Ryan's blinded eyes. Bold, where Sophia was gentle. Glamorous, where Sophia was modest. Her laugh filled the bar she managed, her confidence like fire that drew men close. Ryan met her on one of his darkest nights. The auto shop had lost another customer. His pride was already cracked. He sat hunched over a cheap drink, drowning in frustration. Vanessa saw him and she saw opportunity. She slid into his booth with a smile that promised attention. She listened as he poured out complaints, nodded as he blamed Sophia for his disappointments, and with each word she fed him poison wrapped in silk. "She doesn't understand you," Vanessa whispered. "She keeps you small. With me you could be so much more." Her words stroked his ego, planted seeds of doubt. She told him Sophia stayed late at work for another man, that the baby she carried might not even be his, lies with no proof, yet easy for Ryan to believe. From that night forward, Sophia's loyalty had a rival, and that rival knew exactly how to turn weakness into destruction. Days blurred together, and Sophia learned how to hide her pain. At the hospital she wore long sleeves, even in the heat of summer. Beneath the fabric lay bruises, purple and yellow, silent witnesses to her suffering. She kept her smile steady, her laugh soft, her words calm. No one suspected the storm inside her. Her co-workers praised her dedication, her kindness, the way she never seemed to falter. They saw strength, not knowing it was a mask stitched together by fear. Each night she returned home to silence, to suspicion, to the sharp words Ryan hurled like stones. Alone in her bedroom, she pressed her hands to her stomach, whispering promises to the life inside. She swore she would endure, swore she would keep the baby safe. Yet the loneliness ate at her, piece by piece, until even her reflection felt like a stranger. She cried only in the dark, muffling her sobs so no one could hear. She believed silence was survival. She believed hiding her truth was the only way to keep her world from shattering. But the weight of that secret was already breaking her from within. Far away, 3 men carried the Bennett name with pride and power. Ethan, the eldest, ruled the world of real estate in New York. His voice could move markets, his presence filled any room. Matthew, calm and calculating, built empires of finance in San Francisco. Numbers bent to his will, strategies unfolded at his command. Lucas, the youngest brother before Sophia, burned with passion in Silicon Valley, a leader in technology with ideas that shaped the future. They were men of influence, wealth, and vision. Yet, behind the boardrooms and the headlines, they were still brothers. And in quiet moments when success felt empty, they thought of their sister, the youngest, the gentle heart of the family. Sophia never told them about the bruises. She never confessed the nights she cried alone. Pride held her back, and shame whispered she had failed. She wanted to protect them from her pain, believing she had to endure it alone. But blood has a voice stronger than silence. Though miles away, her brothers would soon hear her suffering. And when they did, their power, their wealth, their fury would all converge into one purpose: to protect her. The flashing red and blue lights painted the quiet street. Neighbors peered through curtains, hands pressed to mouths in shock. Some had heard the screams. Others saw Sophia carried out on a stretcher, her skin pale, her breaths shallow. Her arms were still wrapped around her belly, even in unconsciousness. The wooden stick lay abandoned in the corner of the living room, stained with the weight of violence. Paramedics worked quickly, placing an oxygen mask over her face, checking for the tiny heartbeat that meant everything. Their voices were urgent, clipped, heavy with fear. "She's pregnant," one paramedic called. "We need to move now." The ambulance doors slammed shut. Sirens wailed, and the vehicle sped into the night. Behind, Ryan stood in the doorway, fists clenched, chest heaving. He did not follow. Vanessa's figure lingered in the shadows, her smile cold, her hand curling around his arm. The neighbors whispered, voices trembling. Some picked up phones, calling family, telling them what they had seen. Rumors began to spread, weaving through the community. The story of the kind nurse who lay broken was no longer hidden. The world outside her home had seen, and it would not stay silent. Miles away, 3 lives shifted in the same heartbeat. In New York, Ethan stood in a glass tower. A meeting spread before him. The phone rang, and his face hardened as he listened. Papers lay forgotten as he turned to his assistant. "Cancel everything. My sister needs me." His voice left no room for questions. In San Francisco, Matthew reviewed financial reports under the glow of late-night screens. The call broke his rhythm, and his sharp eyes grew darker with every word. He closed his laptop without hesitation. "Family emergency," he said flatly, already moving toward the door. In Silicon Valley, Lucas leaned over a desk, lines of code dancing across his monitor. His phone lit up with Sophia's name. He answered only to hear her pain, faint and broken. Rage shook his body. He slammed his fist down, nearly shattering the wood. "He hurt her?" His voice cracked with fury. "I'm booking a flight. Now." 3 powerful men. 3 brothers, each from a different corner of the country, each abandoning wealth and duty for one truth. Their baby sister was in danger, and by sunrise, the Bennett brothers would descend on California, carrying with them a storm of vengeance. Ryan had not always been cruel. Years earlier, he was a mechanic with calloused hands and hope in his eyes. He dreamed of opening a shop of his own, building a name, proving he was more than just a man with grease under his nails. Sophia believed in him. She worked late, saved every dollar, and gave him the chance he longed for. But dreams do not always survive reality. Customers drifted to larger garages, bills piled up, and failure clung to him like a second skin. His pride, once his fuel, turned into poison. Every time Sophia returned from the hospital with a steady paycheck, it reminded him of what he could not achieve. Her success became his shame. And then came Vanessa. She offered validation wrapped in temptation. She stroked his ego when it was most fragile, told him he deserved more than a plain nurse who worked endless shifts. Ryan, broken and hungry for worth, clung to her words. Slowly, the love Sophia gave could no longer compete with the lies Vanessa whispered. Resentment grew. Resentment became anger. And anger, when guided by Vanessa's hand, became a weapon. The hospital lights burned white, too bright for tired eyes. Sophia opened them slowly, her body heavy, her shoulder throbbing with pain. For a moment she didn't know where she was. Then, the beeping machines, the sterile walls, the smell of antiseptic told her. She was alive. Barely. Her co-workers gathered at her bedside, their faces pale with shock. Some held flowers, others carried cards. But what they carried most was sorrow. Tears streamed down their cheeks as they looked at the woman who had once been their strength. "You should have told us," one whispered, gripping her hand gently. Sophia forced a small smile, though her lips trembled. "I'm fine," she lied. The lie tasted bitter, but it felt easier than the truth. Behind her smile was terror. What would Ryan do next? Would he come back to finish what he started? She pressed her hand over her belly, relief flooding her when she felt a faint kick. Her baby was still there, still fighting. Her colleagues saw only a fragile woman in a bed. But inside, Sophia carried a storm of fear too heavy for words. While Sophia healed in silence, Ryan and Vanessa laughed loudly in crowded spaces. They sat together in a downtown bar, her hand resting boldly on his, her lipstick leaving marks on his skin for the world to see. He leaned close, whispering, while she tilted her head back in stage delight. People noticed. They always did. And they remembered. Ryan was married. His wife lay in a hospital bed, her body bruised, her soul broken. Yet, here he was, parading his mistress without shame. The whispers grew sharp. Some repeated Vanessa's lies. Maybe Sophia really cheated. Why else would Ryan act like this? Gossip spread like wildfire, climbing from table to table, then out into the streets. The rumors reached Sophia through colleagues who could not hide their pity. Each word pierced deeper than any bruise. She wanted to scream, to shout the truth, that she had given Ryan everything, that she had never betrayed him, but her voice stayed locked inside, smothered by shame. Lying in her hospital bed, Sophia realized the pain of fists was one wound. The pain of humiliation, whispered by strangers, was another, and this one cut her twice as deep. It was supposed to be a place of healing, a place where Sophia found purpose. But Vanessa turned it into another battlefield. She arrived at the hospital draped in a red dress, Ryan at her side, his arm linked with hers as if they were the rightful pair. Their steps echoed down the corridor, loud, deliberate, mocking. Nurses froze. Patients turned their heads. Conversations hushed into silence as Vanessa leaned closer to Ryan, her voice sharp enough to cut through the hall. "You don't need liars anymore. You have me now." The words carried, landing heavy in the ears of everyone who knew Sophia. She sat nearby in her wheelchair, her heart pounding, her hands gripping the armrests, eyes turned toward her, filled with pity, some with disbelief. Sophia's throat tightened, but no tears fell. She forced her chair to roll slowly back toward her room, each push heavier than the last. Behind her, Vanessa's laughter rang out, bright and cruel, echoing through the very place Sophia had given her life to. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was humiliation, public and raw. And for the first time, Sophia wondered if her silence had cost her everything. That night, the hospital room was silent except for the steady hum of machines. Sophia sat curled against the thin pillow, her body trembling with quiet sobs. She pressed her hands to her belly, tears sliding down her bruised face. "I'm so sorry," she whispered into the dark. "I'm sorry you must start life like this." Her voice cracked. The weight of shame crushed her chest. She thought of the future, her child growing up without peace, without love, shadowed by violence she had not stopped. She thought of Ryan's voice, sharp with accusations, and Vanessa's laughter in the hall. Each memory tightened like a rope around her. Sophia wept until her throat ached, her body shaking with the force of grief. She had given everything for love, and now, with nothing left, she felt small, fragile, broken. "I promise I'll protect you," she whispered again, her tears soaking the sheets. "I'll find a way. Just please stay with me." It was a mother's plea, desperate and raw. Alone in the night, Sophia reached for hope through the sound of her own sobs. Her phone buzzed on the bedside table. Sophia wiped her eyes, her hands trembling as she reached for it. The screen glowed with a name that stilled her breath. Ethan, her eldest brother. She hesitated before answering. "Hello?" Her voice was weak, fragile, a whisper of what it used to be. "Sophia?" Ethan's tone was sharp, but underneath it lay fear. "What happened? Why didn't you tell me?" "I'm fine," she lied, though the sob that followed betrayed her. "Please don't worry. You're busy. You don't need—" "Stop!" he cut her off. His words carried the weight of command, the same voice that silenced boardrooms. "You are my sister. Nothing is more important than you. Not business, not money, nothing." Sophia pressed the phone closer, tears spilling again. "I didn't want to bother you. I thought I could endure it alone." "You don't endure anymore." Ethan said firmly. "We're coming. I'll call Matthew and Lucas. By tomorrow, we'll be there." For the first time, Sophia's silence broke under the force of his certainty. A sliver of hope stirred in her chest. Her brothers were coming. By dawn, the hospital corridors filled with new footsteps. Ethan entered first, tall, commanding, his presence filling the room before a word was spoken. His eyes landed on Sophia's bruises, and his hands clenched into fists. Matthew followed, calmer, carrying a quiet strength. He reached her bedside, resting a hand on her arm with steady care. "You should have called us sooner," he said softly, his voice controlled, yet heavy with pain. Lucas came last, younger, but blazing with emotion. He dropped to his knees beside her, pressing his forehead against her hand. His eyes brimmed with tears. "Sophia, my God, what did he do to you?" She tried to smile through her tears. "I didn't want to disturb you. You all have your own lives." "No," Ethan interrupted, his voice firm, unshakable. "You are our life." The three brothers surrounded her, forming a shield. For the first time in weeks, Sophia felt safe. Their presence was armor, their love a force no betrayal could shatter, and in that moment she realized she was no longer alone in her fight. The room grew quiet once the first storm of reunion passed. Sophia lay propped against the pillows, her brothers close. Ethan stood near the window, his jaw tight. Matthew sat ready, notebook in hand. Lucas never let go of her fingers. "Tell us everything," Ethan said at last. His voice was firm, but softened for her. No more hiding. Sophia's lips trembled. Shame burned her chest, but the weight of silence was heavier. Slowly, haltingly, she began. She told them about Ryan's drinking, the late nights at Vanessa's bar, the accusations of betrayal, then the beatings, the stick, the night she collapsed to the floor, begging him to stop. Every word broke her open again, tears streaming freely down her face. She shook with the effort, but she forced herself to continue. Lucas's rage erupted, his fist slamming the bed rail. "I'll kill him." Ethan stopped him, though his jaw was stone, not with rage, with precision. Matthew leaned forward, his voice sharp with resolve. "Ryan is not the only enemy. Vanessa must fall too." Sophia lowered her gaze, her tears dripping onto the blanket. For the first time, her pain was no longer a secret. It was a battle cry. The door burst open without warning. Ryan stepped inside, Vanessa trailing behind him like a shadow in red. Sophia's breath caught as her body stiffened. "You have no right to be here," Ethan snapped, moving instantly between Ryan and the bed. Ryan smirked, tossing a folded paper onto Sophia's blanket. "She's still my wife, and I've decided I want a divorce. She gets nothing, not the house, not the car, and I'll fight for custody. The child will be mine." Sophia's eyes widened, her hand instinctively covering her stomach. "You wouldn't." "Watch me," Ryan spat. Vanessa leaned in, her voice dripping with venom. "Poor Ryan, tricked by a liar. But don't worry, love. Soon she'll be out of the picture." Lucas lunged forward, fury flashing, but Matthew pulled him back. "Not here," he hissed. The papers sat heavy on Sophia's lap, each word like poison. She trembled, tears burning her eyes. Ethan's voice cut through the silence, low and dangerous. "You've made the biggest mistake of your life." But Ryan only laughed, blind to the storm already rising against him. After Ryan left, the air in the hospital room remained heavy. The papers lay on the nightstand, untouched, their threat impossible to ignore. The brothers gathered in the family lounge. Ethan stood tall, arms crossed, his jaw locked. "We don't meet him with rage," he said firmly. "We meet him with precision. We end him piece by piece." Matthew flipped open his notebook, his mind already turning. "First step, evidence. Medical records, financial trails, witnesses. Vanessa's lies won't hold up if we expose them." Lucas paced like a caged storm, fists clenched, voice shaking. "He nearly killed her, and now he wants the baby. You expect me to sit here and wait?" Ethan's eyes burned, but his voice stayed sharp. "Yes, because waiting is how we win. We strike smart, not sloppy." Lucas stopped pacing, his chest heaving. His rage had no outlet, but his loyalty was unshakable. "Then tell me what to do. I'll do it." Matthew nodded. "I'll hire investigators. There will be a trail. There always is." The brothers leaned in together, their plan taking shape. It was no longer just about defense. It was about war. Days later, Ryan returned, dressed neatly this time. He carried a bouquet of white lilies, his expression carefully painted with remorse. Nurses frowned, but he pleaded softly. "I just want to apologize." Sophia's heart raced when he entered. She had never seen him so humble, his eyes lowered, his voice trembling. "Sophie," he whispered, "I was wrong. Vanessa twisted me. Please forgive me. Let me come home." Tears filled her eyes. For a moment she saw the man she once loved. He placed the flowers on her table, then slid an envelope beside them. "It's nothing complicated," he said gently. "Just an agreement. A fresh start for us, for the baby." When her brothers stepped out to meet doctors, Sophia was left alone. She stared at the papers, her hands trembling. His words echoed, "Do it for our family. Do it for the baby." Her pen hovered above the line. Her heart begged for peace, for hope. If this was the way to protect her child, could she refuse? The ink was about to touch the paper. The door swung open just as the pen trembled in Sophia's hand. Ethan froze, his sharp eyes landing on the documents. His voice thundered across the room. "Sophia, put that down." Startled, she dropped the pen, tears spilling as she whispered, "But what if this is the only way?" Ethan seized the papers, flipping through the thick stack with shaking hands. His face darkened with every page. "This isn't reconciliation," he growled. "It's a trap." Matthew scanned the text quickly, his trained eyes catching the deceit. "Here," he pointed, voice tight. "This clause transfers custody of the child to Ryan, and this one strips you of every asset. If you had signed, you would have lost everything." Sophia's breath caught, her body trembling. "He said it was for us. He said—" "No." Ethan cut her off, kneeling by her side. His voice softened but stayed firm. "That man is gone, Sophie. This was never about love, only power." Lucas slammed his fist against the wall, fury bursting. "I'll drag him back and make him choke on these papers." Ethan gripped his arm. "No. We'll destroy him with the truth. That's how he falls." The morning light spilled through the blinds, and Sophia caught her reflection in the small hospital mirror. For the first time, she did not see only a victim. She saw a woman who had endured the unthinkable and still breathed. Her fingers traced the fading bruises on her cheek. They were marks of pain, but also proof of survival. She pressed her hand to her stomach, whispering softly, "I won't let him take you. Not him. Not anyone." Her brothers watched silently as she straightened her posture, her voice gaining strength. "I don't want to hide anymore. I want to fight." Lucas's face lit with fierce pride. "That's my sister." Matthew opened a folder, laying out documents and photographs. "This is the foundation. Medical records, witness statements. With your testimony, we'll build the case, but it will mean standing strong in public." Sophia flipped through the pages, her hands trembling but steadying with each line. "Let them try to shame me. Let them twist my words. They can't take the truth from me." Ethan placed a firm hand on her shoulder, his voice low and resolute. "Good. Then this time, Sophie, we fight together." The cameras switched on, their red lights glowing. Sophia sat in front of the lens, her bruises faint but still visible. Her hands rested on her lap, trembling at first, but when she began to speak, her voice steadied. She told the world about the nights of silence, the beatings, the betrayal. She spoke of love turned to cruelty, of trust shattered by lies. Her eyes glistened with tears, but her gaze did not falter. "He tried to take everything from me," she said softly, her hand resting over her stomach. "But he forgot one thing. I still have my truth." The interview aired that night, and within hours, the world responded. Social media lit up with outrage, voices rising in unity. Hashtags spread like fire. #justice for Sophia. Strangers sent messages of support. Neighbors left flowers at the hospital. Women across the country whispered her name with courage. Sophia watched the wave build from her hospital room, her brothers at her side. For the first time, she felt the world believed her. But Ethan warned quietly, "Don't celebrate too soon. Cornered animals are dangerous." And across town, Ryan and Vanessa were already sharpening their claws. The backlash burned Ryan and Vanessa like fire. His shop emptied, her bar sat in silence. Their names filled headlines, their faces plastered across news feeds. "We'll destroy her," Vanessa hissed, sliding a folder across the table. Inside were doctored messages, forged hotel receipts, and fake photographs. "We make the world think she cheated. Once her reputation collapses, no one will believe her." Ryan smirked, though unease flickered in his eyes. "And the brothers? Even they can't save her if everyone thinks she's a liar," Vanessa replied coldly. The next morning, the internet exploded. Screenshots spread across blogs. Headlines screamed accusations. Nurse caught in secret affair. Pregnancy in doubt. The lies slithered into every corner, turning whispers into daggers. Sophia saw the headlines in the hospital. Her hands shook as she whispered, "No, it's not true. I've never—" Her voice broke. Ethan tore the papers from her hands, his face thunderous. "This is fabrication. Trash. We'll prove it." But the damage cut deep. Patients whispered. Strangers online hurled insults. The world's faith wavered. Lucas slammed his fist. "They want war? Good. They'll get it." And then an unexpected voice offered the weapon they needed. The hospital lounge door opened softly. A woman stepped in, middle-aged, with tired eyes and a trembling purse clutched in her hands. "Are you Sophia Bennett?" she asked. Sophia nodded cautiously. The woman drew closer. "My name is Marisol Vega. I used to work for Vanessa Lopez, and I can prove everything." She set a folder on the table. Inside were photographs, copies of messages, notes in her own handwriting. Her voice shook as she spoke. "Vanessa made me forge the texts, the receipts, all of it." She laughed when she said, "Once people think Sophia's a liar, Ryan can take the baby, and no one can stop him." Sophia gasped, her tears spilling. You saw her do it?" Marisol nodded, her eyes wet with guilt. "I was afraid. But after I saw your interview, I couldn't stay silent. She's already ruined too many lives." Matthew examined the documents, his calm voice turning sharp. "This is damning. Combined with your testimony, it will destroy them." Ethan leaned forward. "Are you ready to stand in court? On camera?" Marisol straightened her shoulders. "Yes. She cannot silence me anymore." And with her words, the tide turned. The Beverly Hills Gala glittered with wealth and power. Cameras flashed, gowns sparkled, and whispers filled the grand hall. When Sophia entered with her brothers, silence fell. Her navy dress was simple, her bruises faint but visible, her hand resting on her stomach. She carried them not as shame, but as proof. Ryan and Vanessa were already there, dressed to impress, smiles plastered on their faces. Their confidence faltered the moment Sophia and the Bennett brothers strode toward the stage. Ethan took the microphone first, his voice commanding. "Tonight is not about business. Tonight is about truth." Sophia stepped forward, her voice trembling at first, but soon strong. "I was beaten, betrayed, humiliated, and when I spoke, they tried to destroy me with lies." Gasps rippled through the room. Then Matthew signaled, and Marisol walked on stage. Her testimony was clear, her documents projected for all to see. "This was Vanessa's doing," she declared. "I forged the evidence under her orders." Chaos erupted. Vanessa screamed, lunging forward, but security restrained her. Ryan's face strained as police moved in, handcuffs clicking shut. The room thundered with applause. Justice had arrived. Outside the gala, beneath the California stars, Sophia stood with her brothers. The police cars carried Ryan and Vanessa away. For the first time in months, she breathed without fear. Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. "It's over, Sophie. You're free." Sophia touched her stomach, her eyes glistening. "Not just free," she whispered. "Stronger. For me. For my baby." Reporters swarmed, microphones raised. One called out, "Sophia, do you have a message for women watching tonight?" She lifted her head, her voice clear and unwavering. "Never stay silent. Your voice is your power. I thought silence would protect me, but it only gave him more strength. To every woman suffering in the dark, you are not weak. You are not alone. Speak, and you will find courage." The applause that followed was thunderous, echoing through the night. Her brothers embraced her, holding her close. Together they had turned pain into power, betrayal into truth. And as the story closed, a new one began. The story of survival, dignity, and hope. If this journey touched your heart, share it. Subscribe so more voices can rise. Because courage spreads when stories are told. At her best friend's lavish wedding, Serafina Monroe froze. The man waiting at the altar was no stranger. He was the billionaire who once shattered her heart, and he was also the man who had unknowingly left her with a gift she carried for life, her son, now standing beside her, clinging tightly to her hand. Crystal lights blazed above. Music floated gracefully through the hall. Guests all around smiled with joy and blessings. But for Serafina, it felt as if her heart had stopped. Her little boy looked up and whispered, "Mom, why does that man keep staring at us?" His clear gray eyes were the exact reflection of the man at the altar. In that instant, Serafina realized The secret she had buried for 9 long years might explode here, in front of everyone. The bride smiled proudly, holding on to her perfect fiancé's arm. But Serafina knew that with just one glance, one careless word, at least one life would be shattered before this night was over. If it were you, would you stay silent, or reveal everything? Stay with this story, because this is only the beginning. Serafina's body froze. Her hands trembled as she pulled her son closer. Evan leaned against her, sensing something was wrong but not knowing why. A voice rang out across the hall, bright, cheerful, filled with pride. Genevieve Hart, glowing in her white gown, walked forward. She raised her hand toward the groom. "Everyone, I'd like you to meet my fiancé, Thaddeus Lockhart." The name cut through the room like glass. Sarah's heart dropped into her stomach. Her legs felt weak, as if the floor might give way. All around them, guests clapped, smiling, unaware. To them, it was a beautiful announcement, a perfect couple. To Sarah, it was a cruel twist of fate. The chandeliers above seemed to spin. The music swelled too loud, then too soft. She could barely hear anything except the pounding of her heart. Evan tugged at her sleeve, whispering, "Mom, are you okay?" She forced a smile that never reached her eyes. The past had just walked into the present, and it was standing at the altar with her best friend. The story shifts back. Days earlier, life had been simple. A knock at the door, a delivery. Sarah opened it to find a cream envelope with golden letters, her name written in Genevieve's familiar hand. She sat at the kitchen table, Evan bouncing beside her. Inside, a wedding invitation shimmered. "The honor of your presence." It was elegant, extravagant. A handwritten note slipped out with it. "Sarah, it would mean the world to me if you came. Please don't say no." Evan's eyes widened. "A wedding? Do they have cake?" His voice was pure excitement. He pressed his face to the invitation, pretending to smell it. Sarah managed a smile, but inside her chest tightened. A wedding meant memories. A wedding meant facing a world she had left behind. She folded the invitation carefully, as if it might cut her fingers. The edges gleamed under the kitchen light. That night, long after Evan fell asleep, she stared at the card again. The handwriting, the promise, the past knocking at her door. Back then, things were different. Sarah and Genevieve had once been inseparable. 2 young women chasing dreams, studying side by side, laughing through nights of ramen and textbooks. They swore nothing would come between them. But life has its own plans. Genevieve rose quickly, climbing her way into a shining career. Sarah's path was cut short, a love affair, a pregnancy she never planned. And then, silence. She vanished without goodbye. No explanations, no calls, no more letters. To Genevieve, it must have felt like betrayal. To Sarah, it was survival. The memories came rushing back as she turned the invitation over in her hands. The woman in the white dress was not just a bride. She was a piece of Sarah's own lost youth. Evan's laughter drifted from the other room. The sound brought her back to the present. She had built a new life. Simple. Quiet. Just her and her boy. But the invitation threatened to tear the silence wide open. And behind that door waited not only a friend, but a past Sarah was never ready to face. The kitchen was dark. Only the glow of a small lamp lit the room. Sarah sat with a half-finished glass of wine. The invitation lay in front of her, daring her to decide. She lifted it again. Her eyes caught the last line, written by Genevieve's hand. "All expenses covered. Please come." The letters trembled slightly, as if written in haste, or maybe in fear. Her fingers brushed over the ink. Was it guilt? Was it longing? Or simply duty? She couldn't tell. From the hallway, Evan peeked in. "Are we going, Mom? I want to see the cake. I want to see the dancing." His voice was eager, innocent. Sarah forced a smile, but her chest ached. To go meant stepping back into a world of pain. To stay meant closing the door on a friendship forever. She set the glass down. The wine rippled. Outside, the night was silent, waiting for her choice. She whispered to herself, "Do I face it, or do I run again?" Her eyes lifted from the invitation to the living room. Evan's laughter echoed as he built towers with his blocks. His joy filled the small space. Yet his face, his eyes, reminded her of a truth she could never escape. Morning light filled the small apartment. Evan sat at the table, hair messy, eyes bright. He was only 8, yet his curiosity never rested. He leaned over his cereal bowl and asked, "Will I ever meet my dad?" The question hit Sarah like a knife. She turned away, hiding her face behind the coffee cup. Her throat tightened. Evan tilted his head, waiting. His eyes, clear gray, sharp and alive, searched hers. The same gray she once fell in love with. The same eyes that had once stared at her in another man's face. She reached over, brushing his hair back. "You already have everything you need," she whispered. But even she didn't believe her own words. Evan smiled, undisturbed, and began to chatter about school, space, and the stars. He spoke about planets as if they were his friends. Sarah listened, her heart aching. Every word reminded her of the man she once loved. Every laugh reminded her that the past still lived in her son's smile. The boy was his father's mirror, and Sarah knew the truth could not be hidden forever. The days moved quickly. A suitcase stood open on the bed. Clothes folded, shoes stacked. Evan darted around, choosing his favorite shirts. "Don't forget my telescope!" he shouted, holding up the small instrument like treasure. His face glowed. "I want to see the stars over the mountains." Sarah forced a smile, folding another dress into the case. Her hands shook as she smoothed the fabric. Each shirt, each pair of socks felt like a countdown. A step closer to the past, she feared. Evan zipped his backpack, laughing. "This will be the best trip ever." His voice carried no weight, only excitement. But Sarah's chest was heavy. Something gnawed inside her. A whisper she couldn't name. A warning she couldn't quiet. She walked through the apartment one last time, turned off the lights, locked the door. The sound echoed in her ears, a sound like finality. This wasn't just a trip. She felt it deep down. It was a return to everything she had tried to leave behind. The road wound through the mountains, sharp curves hugging the cliffs. Evan pressed his face to the window, pointing at every sight. "Look! A bear!" His laughter filled the car, light and free. He waved at the trees, the rivers, the endless sky. Sarah gripped the wheel, her knuckles pale. The beauty of Lake Tahoe stretched before them, vast and sparkling. To Evan, it was magic. To her, it was a mirror of everything unsettled inside. The closer they came, the more the mountains seemed to close in. Her stomach tightened. Her hands grew damp. "Mom, it's like a fairy tale!" Evan shouted. His joy was boundless. She glanced at him, a small smile tugging at her lips. For him, she had to be strong. Yet, as the resort appeared in the distance, grand, white, rising above the lake, her heart sank. The world she had once belonged to was waiting, and with every mile, the past grew nearer. The car rolled to a stop. A manager in a tailored suit stepped forward, smiling wide. "Ms. Monroe, welcome. We've prepared everything for you and your son." Evan jumped out first, eyes wide. "Wow, Mom, it's huge!" His voice echoed off marble pillars. They were led through polished halls to a private cabin. The air smelled of pine and fresh linen. It felt too perfect, too prepared. Evan rushed into his room. His eyes lit up. The walls were painted with constellations. A telescope stood by the window, pointing at the night sky. His laughter filled the cabin. "Mom, they knew I loved space." Sarah paused in the doorway. Her chest tightened. The detail was too precise, too personal. She smiled at Evan, but unease coiled inside her. Why would anyone think of this? Who had arranged it? The boy spun in circles, already lost in wonder. But Sarah stood still, her heart whispering a truth she wasn't ready to face. The welcome felt like kindness. Yet, beneath it lay a question she couldn't shake. The wedding coordinator smiled as she handed Sarah the schedule. Mr. Lockhart insisted on every detail himself. He wanted every guest to feel at home. The name hit like thunder. Lockhart. Sarah froze. Her voice barely steady, she asked, "What's his full name?" "Thaddeus Lockhart," the woman replied brightly. "The founder of Lockhart Innovations. Quite the visionary." The world tilted beneath Sarah. Her breath caught. Thaddeus Lockhart. Her Thaddeus. The man who once held her heart. The man who had never known about Evan. She swallowed hard, forcing a polite nod, but her hands trembled on the doorknob. In the next room, Evan unpacked a telescope left on his bed. His delighted laugh echoed, sharp against the silence in her chest. The universe had played a cruel trick. She had come for a friend's wedding, and instead, she stood at the edge of a truth she had fought to bury for 9 years. Her son's father was here. Not a memory, not a ghost. Real. Alive. Waiting on the other side of the door. And tomorrow, he would marry her best friend. The cabin glowed warm with lantern light, yet Sarah felt trapped in shadows. She paced the living room, her pulse racing. Leave now, or stay. Her mind screamed to run, to pack Evan's bag, claim an emergency, vanish before Thaddeus ever saw them, but her body stayed rooted, paralyzed by the collision of past and present. From the bedroom, Evan's voice rang out. "Mom, look! A NASA t-shirt! And a book about stars!" He burst into the room, grinning, arms full of gifts. His eyes, Thaddeus's eyes, sparkled with joy. "This place is amazing!" Sarah forced a smile. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." But inside a storm raged. Could she protect him from the truth forever? Or was the lie already collapsing? Outside, the lake shimmered under the setting sun, serene and unbothered. Birds skimmed the surface, and laughter drifted from the pavilion where preparations had begun. The contrast made her chest ache. Evan lived in innocence, a world of stars and simple joys. She lived in dread, each moment ticking closer to the moment of recognition. Her hands tightened around the book he'd handed her. She couldn't stop trembling. The pavilion sparkled with golden lights. Guests mingled, glasses of champagne glinting. Evan tugged Sarah's hand, wide-eyed at the sight of musicians, food, and endless laughter. "Mom, do they have cake yet?" he whispered, his tone full of awe. Before she could answer, a familiar voice called out, "Sarah!" Genevieve swept through the crowd, radiant in a champagne-colored dress, curls pinned in elegant waves. She embraced Sarah tightly, her perfume stirring memories of late nights in their college apartment. "I can't believe you came," Genevieve beamed. "It means everything to me." Her gaze shifted to Evan. "And this must be your son." Evan straightened like a young gentleman. "Nice to meet you. Congratulations on your wedding." Genevieve knelt, charmed. Polite and handsome. "He looks so much like you." Sarah's stomach twisted at the irony. Every guest laughed and drank, unaware of the truth standing between them. Evan drifted toward the children's table, leaving the women alone. Genevieve slipped her arm through Sarah's. "Come, let me show you everything. You'll love the surprises we've planned." Sarah smiled, but inside, every step felt like walking deeper into a trap. The two women stood by the edge of the terrace overlooking the lake as twilight deepened. Music swelled behind them, muffling the quiet tension. Genevieve sipped her drink, then turned, eyes sharp but her tone casual. "And his father? Not in the picture?" Sarah froze. Her chest tightened. She steadied her glass before answering. "No, he doesn't know." The words fell heavy, more confession than explanation. Genevieve tilted her head, studying her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Really?" Sarah's throat burned. She wanted to change the subject, to hide behind small talk, but Genevieve's gaze pinned her in place. It was the same gaze she'd used in college when prying out Sarah's secrets, playful yet relentless. The music swelled with laughter, but for Sarah the night grew cold. She tightened her shawl, wishing the ground would open and swallow her whole. Genevieve's smile lingered, enigmatic, unreadable. Then she raised her glass in a quiet toast. "To old friends and new beginnings." Sarah clinked glasses, forcing her lips into a curve, but her pulse thundered, because she knew, tomorrow, the past would catch her. The music shifted. A wave of applause rose from the crowd. Guests turned toward the grand staircase as the groom appeared. Thaddeus Lockhart descended with slow, measured steps. Tall, composed, a man used to owning every room he entered. His tuxedo gleamed under the lights. His presence silenced whispers. Sarah's breath caught. Her chest tightened as if bound by iron. Then it happened. Their eyes met. For a moment, sound vanished. The laughter, the music, the clinking glasses, all gone. The world held its breath. His gaze locked on hers. Shock flickered, followed by recognition, disbelief, and something deeper. Memories he thought buried now alive in her face. Sarah's knees weakened. She clutched the railing, praying Evan would not notice her shaking hands. Around them, guests cheered, oblivious to the storm brewing in silence. Thaddeus faltered for the briefest second. To anyone else it was nothing, but to her it was everything. 9 years of distance collapsed in a single glance. Genevieve's voice broke the tension. She raised her glass, her smile bright. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I present my fiancé, Thaddeus Lockhart." Applause filled the hall again, but Thaddeus did not move. His eyes were still locked on Sarah. He stepped closer, his voice unsteady, almost a whisper, yet audible enough. "Sarah?" The name slipped into the air like a secret. Sarah's face drained of color. Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence that followed pressed heavy on the room. It was brief, but sharp, like glass cutting skin. a stillness only broken by Evan's laughter somewhere near the dessert table. Genevieve, unaware, clung to his arm, beaming at the guests. But Thaddeus stood frozen, the past roaring back in one word. Every detail in Sarah's face screamed of the woman he had once loved. Every second stretched longer, as if the world itself paused to watch them. A sudden sound broke the silence. Small footsteps racing across polished floors. "Mom!" Evan's voice rang clear as he ran toward her, holding a cookie in his hand. He wrapped his arms around her waist. His gray eyes sparkled as he looked up. "This place is amazing." Thaddeus turned. His breath caught in his chest. The boy's face, the hair, the eyes, his eyes. The recognition struck like lightning. Every doubt, every possibility, every unspoken fear landed at once. Sarah tightened her hold on Evan, her body a shield. She avoided Thaddeus's stare, but it was too late. Thaddeus's hand trembled as he set down his glass. He could not look away. The boy was his reflection, the answer to questions he had never asked. Guests cheered again as music swelled, unaware of the storm that had just cracked open. Inside Thaddeus's chest, truth burned, and it demanded answers. The reception ended with music and laughter, but Sarah carried none of it back to her cabin. She tucked Evan into bed. His breathing steadied, soft and innocent, untouched by the weight pressing down on her heart. Alone in the quiet, she sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dark window. Her reflection looked pale, almost unrecognizable. The knock came suddenly, firm, unrelenting. Her body stiffened. She rose slowly, every step heavy. Another knock, stronger. She opened the door. Thaddeus stood there, shadows lining his face. His eyes blazed with questions, with pain, with recognition he could not deny. "Sarah," he said, voice low but sharp. "We need to talk." The night air rushed in around them. Evan stirred in the bedroom but did not wake. Sarah gripped the doorframe, torn between slamming it shut and letting the past walk in. Her silence was the only answer, and so the conversation that would change everything began. The door shut behind them. Silence pressed in. Only the sound of Evan's steady breathing filled the cabin. Thaddeus stood in the center of the room. His hands shook. His voice cracked as he whispered, "He's mine, isn't he?" Sarah's lips trembled. She wanted to deny it, to hide, to protect the fragile wall she had built for 9 years. But the truth burned too heavy. She nodded. The air left Thaddeus's chest in a broken gasp. He staggered back, one hand to his mouth. His eyes filled with tears he could no longer hold. "You kept him from me," he whispered, grief flooding every word. "All these years." Sarah turned away, her own tears streaming. "I did what I had to do." The distance between them was only a few feet, but it felt like a canyon. The weight of 9 silent years pressed down, suffocating both. For Thaddeus, it was a revelation. For Sarah, it was a wound reopened. And for Evan, asleep in the next room, it was the beginning of a truth he would soon discover. The words poured out, jagged, bitter. Thaddeus paced the floor, pain sharpening his tone. "You vanished. No call. No letter. Nothing. I thought you left me." Sarah shook her head, her voice breaking. "You knew, Thad. You had to know. I thought you just didn't care." Their eyes collided, anger and grief tangled. Thaddeus's fists clenched. "I waited. I checked every message. Nothing came. Do you understand? I thought you chose to disappear." Sarah's chest heaved. "I emailed you. I wrote everything. The pregnancy, the fear, and you never answered. I cried for weeks, waiting." The silence stretched. Thaddeus blinked, confusion dawning. "Email?" His face twisted, realization hitting. "The company server. I changed addresses. The old account." Her breath caught. The room spun. "You never saw it?" His voice cracked. "Not one word." The fury melted into despair. 2 lives destroyed by a single gap, a glitch, a cruel accident. 9 years stolen, not by choice, but by silence. And now, the truth stood raw between them. A soft creak. The bedroom door opened. Evan rubbed his eyes, holding his blanket, hair sticking up in every direction. "Mom?" he asked sleepily. Then his gaze drifted to Thaddeus. He frowned. "Who are you?" Sarah froze. Thaddeus stood motionless, his heart hammering. The boy's eyes narrowed, studying his face. The resemblance was undeniable. Finally, the words slipped out, innocent and sharp. "Are you my dad?" The room cracked open. Sarah covered her mouth, tears spilling. Thaddeus bent down slowly, his knees hitting the carpet. His eyes locked on his son's. His throat tightened. "Yes, I'm your dad." Evan blinked, stunned. His small hands gripped the blanket tighter. No one spoke. The silence was fragile, trembling. For the first time, father and son stood face to face. It was the moment that shattered everything, and the moment that began to heal. Thaddeus reached out but stopped short, afraid to push. His voice trembled. If I had known about you, I would never have left, not for a single day." Evan shifted, uncertain. His eyes darted to his mother, searching for truth. Sarah nodded slowly, tears running down her cheeks. "He didn't know, sweetheart. He never knew." The boy's shoulders softened. Still, hesitation lingered. He whispered, "Why now?" Thaddeus swallowed hard. "Because now I have the chance to do what I should have done from the start. To be your father, if you'll let me." The words hung heavy, trembling in the air. Evan studied him, torn between fear and longing. Then, for the first time, his eyes softened. A small step forward. Not a hug. Not yet. But enough. Hope flickered between them, fragile but real. Thaddeus's hand lowered to the floor. He didn't rush, didn't demand. He only waited. And in that stillness, a seed of trust was planted. The next morning, sunlight spilled across the resort. Genevieve entered the cabin, her smile bright but eyes sharp. She had noticed Thaddeus's absence the night before. She froze when she saw him standing near Sarah, the boy between them. "Thaddeus?" Her voice cut the air. He turned, pale, shaken. "Genevieve, I need to tell you something." Her gaze swept from him to Evan, then back again. The silence was its own confession. "Please," Thaddeus whispered. "I didn't know. He's my son. I only found out last night." The glass slipped from Genevieve's hand, shattering on the floor. Her chest rose and fell in sharp bursts. "So," her voice trembled, then hardened. "All this time, I was always second." Sarah lowered her head, shame pressing heavy. Evan clung to her side, confused. Guests laughed outside, music drifting in, but inside the cabin the air was tight, heavy with betrayal. Genevieve's face crumpled, but she forced her chin high. Pride kept her standing. But her eyes burned with fire. The triangle had broken, and nothing could be put back the same way again. The room was silent, the pieces of glass still glittering on the floor. Genevieve's breath hitched, and when she finally spoke, her voice carried both pain and steel. "You think I don't know what it's like to lose?" she said. "I've spent years in doctors' offices, pills, injections, endless tests. They told me I'd never carry a child." Her hands shook as she pressed them to her chest. "Do you know what it feels like to sit at baby showers? To smile while your insides collapse? To pretend it doesn't matter?" Sarah's eyes filled. She had never known. She whispered, "Genevieve." But Genevieve stepped back, her face a mask of anguish. "And then you show up, with him, with his child, the one thing I could never give." Her voice cracked, raw and sharp. "Don't you see? This wedding was my chance, my only chance to feel whole." Tears streaked her face, but her chin lifted again, fighting for dignity. Thaddeus's shoulders sagged. He reached for her, but she recoiled, her heart torn between envy, grief, and the pride that refused to let her break in front of them. Later that evening, Sarah found Genevieve alone on the terrace. The lake reflected the stars, silent witness to a friendship unraveling. Genevieve didn't turn when Sarah approached, her voice cut through the night. "Did you come here to take him back?" The words stung like ice. Sarah's voice cracked. "No, I never knew he was here. I never planned this." Genevieve turned, her eyes red but blazing. "But he looked at you like he had never stopped. Do you know what that does to me?" Sarah's chest tightened. "I didn't come to hurt you. I came because you asked me. Because you're still my friend." The word friend hung heavy, broken, almost mocking. Genevieve's lips trembled. "Friends don't bring secrets like this to a wedding," Sarah whispered. "I carried that secret alone. For 9 years. Not to betray you, but to survive." The two women stood facing each other, shadows of what they once were. Their bond cracked, but in Genevieve's eyes a flicker of something softer passed. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the faintest trace of understanding. The night had not ended when Evan's cry shattered the silence. Sarah rushed to his side. He sat on the bed, clutching his chest, his small body trembling. "Mom, it hurts," he whispered. Thaddeus was there in an instant, fear slicing through him. "What's wrong?" The doctor at the resort was summoned. After a quick check, his face grew serious. "There are signs of a connective tissue disorder. It could be EDS. He needs proper tests, and soon." The words hung heavy, heavier than betrayal, heavier than pride. This was life itself at stake. Sarah held Evan close, tears streaming. Thaddeus gripped the doctor's arm. "What do we need to do?" The answer was clear. The boy needed both parents. He needed the father's history, his blood, his presence. Suddenly, everything shifted. The fights, the jealousy, the past, it all fell away in the face of one truth. This was no longer about old wounds. It was about Evan's right to live. And that truth bound them together, whether they wanted it or not. The ballroom glittered with lights. Guests laughed, glasses clinked. But when Genevieve walked onto the stage, silence fell. Her hands shook, but her voice was clear. "There's been a change." She glanced at Thaddeus, then at Sarah, then at the boy who carried all their faces. "This wedding will not happen today." Gasps rippled through the crowd. She steadied herself, chin high. "Not canceled, postponed, until the truth can settle, until hearts can breathe again." The words stunned the room. Some guests whispered in shock. Others sat frozen, holding their glasses mid-air. Thaddeus lowered his head, shame weighing him down. Sarah's eyes filled, torn between guilt and gratitude. Evan squeezed his mother's hand, confused but calm. Genevieve stepped back, her smile faint but proud. "Love is not about the perfect picture," she said. "It's about truth. And today, truth demands its place." The hall erupted, not in cheers, not in applause, but in stunned silence. The fairy tale wedding had shattered. But in its place, something more raw and real had begun. What was meant to be a wedding turned into something else. The orchestra played softer. The candles still flickered. Guests remained, not knowing whether to stay or leave. Then Genevieve lifted her glass. "Tonight is not the night for vows," she said. "It is the night to honor what makes us human. Truth, family, resilience." Her voice wavered, but the room listened. Thaddeus joined her, his hand resting briefly on her shoulder before falling back to his side. "Genevieve deserves more than a half-truth, and my son deserves all of me." Eyes turned to Evan, who stood by Sarah, clutching her hand. The boy shifted nervously, not understanding all of it, but feeling the weight. One by one, guests began to raise their glasses, not for a marriage, but for a story that had unraveled in front of them. The toasts rang with mixed emotions, confusion, sorrow, but also respect. The celebration had changed shape. It was no longer about a perfect beginning. It was about surviving brokenness and still standing tall. And in that strange moment, the hall felt heavier, yet somehow more honest than before. Later that night, music softened. Guests drifted away. Only family remained. Evan tugged on his mother's sleeve. His eyes lifted, nervous but steady. He looked past her to the man who had watched him with tears all evening. He swallowed, then whispered, "Dad." The single word cracked open the silence. Thaddeus dropped to his knees, tears spilling freely. He pulled the boy into his arms, holding him as if making up for every year lost. Sarah stood near, her chest tight, hands trembling. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but never like this. Evan buried his face in his father's shoulder. Thaddeus held him tighter, whispering, "I'm here now. I'll never let you go." For the first time in years, Sarah let herself cry without restraint. Not from fear, not from guilt, but from the raw weight of love. The room, once built for spectacle, now witnessed something far more profound. Not a wedding, not a vow, but a father and son finding each other at last. The following days blurred. Guests left with stories they would whisper for years. Genevieve packed her things quietly. She embraced Sarah once, not with warmth, but with the dignity of closure. "I need distance," she said. "Europe will give me that." Her eyes softened for a moment. "Take care of him." Then she was gone. Thaddeus stayed. Not as a groom, not as a CEO, but as a father. He sat with Evan through meals, read to him at night, learned his laugh, his quirks. Sarah watched, her heart torn between relief and fear. Could this last? Could she trust him now after so many years apart? One evening, as Evan slept, Thaddeus turned to her. "I can't change the years I missed, but I can promise you this. I'll be here every day from now on." She didn't answer right away. She simply nodded, her gaze drifting to the boy sleeping peacefully. The future was unclear, but for the first time in years, the weight in her chest had lifted. Evan stirred in his sleep, murmuring the word "Dad" once more, as if holding on to it even in his dreams. And in that fragile moment, hope quietly returned. Hope. A word whispered by a child in his sleep, a word strong enough to bind a fractured family, yet fragile enough to be broken again. The story had shifted. Secrets revealed. A father reclaimed. A child no longer alone. For the first time in 9 years, Serafina let herself breathe. Evan's laughter filled the cabin as dawn touched the lake. He had called Thaddeus Dad, a word that changed everything. Yet not all wounds had healed. Genevieve walked away, pride hiding her pain. Across the ocean, her story was far from over, and Evan's faint symptoms lingered, a shadow that could not be ignored. The truth had brought them together, but the future would test how strong that truth really was. What do you think comes next? Will Thaddeus truly step into fatherhood? Will Genevieve return? And what about Evan's health? Share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll be here when the next chapter arrives, because this story isn't finished. This is only the beginning.